"Excuse me, ma'am, I need to see your boarding pass again," the flight attendant said, her voice dripping with impatience. Her gaze was sharp as she scrutinized the ticket in her hand. "Your boarding pass needs to be confirmed before you can board. You'll have to step aside for the others." Jessica, a poised black CEO, calmly extended her boarding pass once more, though inside she felt a storm brewing. "There's no mistake. I'm in seat." Within moments, a security guard approached, quickly gripping Jessica's arm as she attempted to explain her situation. His fingers dug into her tailored jacket as he began to pull her away from the gate. Nearby passengers looked on, some showing concern, while others appeared indifferent, with a few nodding in approval of the guard's actions. Suddenly, chaos erupted. The massive departure screens throughout the terminal flickered and then went completely dark. The electronic displays at the boarding gates froze, and announcements over the PA system cut off abruptly. Confusion rippled through the terminal, amplifying the already tense atmosphere. Passengers who were boarding halted in their tracks, while airline staff stared at their dead computer terminals in disbelief. Gate 27B descended into utter chaos. Shouts filled the air, carry-on luggage lay scattered across the waiting area, and airline personnel scrambled to maintain order but failed miserably. This was no ordinary flight delay. Something far more significant was unfolding. This narrative illustrates the unexpected turn of events. When a woman, initially underestimated and denied boarding, reveals her true power, compelling the airline to reconsider its actions. Have you ever faced discrimination at the airport? We invite you to share your story in the comments. If you believe in standing against injustice, consider subscribing to our channel to stay informed and involved. Let us know where you're watching from by typing justice below, because this story of empowerment is just beginning. Jessica Taylor is a remarkable figure, known as the CEO of Nexus Innovations, a leading tech company. Her journey to success is a testament to resilience and determination, emerging from a challenging upbringing. Raised by a single mother who worked multiple jobs to provide for their family, Jessica learned the value of hard work and perseverance early on. From a young age, she demonstrated exceptional talent with technology, often spending hours repairing broken electronics and teaching herself to code on a second-hand computer her teacher had salvaged for her. While her peers indulged in typical teenage activities, Jessica focused on honing her skills, driven by the desire to improve her circumstances. By the age of 17, she was already earning enough from her tech repairs to contribute to the household expenses. However, the path to her success was fraught with obstacles. Despite achieving perfect scores on her SATs, she faced rejections from prestigious colleges and was waitlisted at every top tech school. When she finally gained admission to a university on a partial scholarship, she juggled multiple jobs alongside her studies. After graduation, she encountered systemic bias in the workplace, witnessing less experienced colleagues receive promotions while her contributions went unrecognized. Instead of succumbing to these challenges, Jessica decided to forge her own path. At 28, she took a bold step by mortgaging everything to start Nexus Innovations, which has since grown exponentially, employing thousands and generating significant profits. Her story exemplifies the power of tenacity and the drive to succeed against all odds. On the morning of her pivotal journey, Jessica prepared for a crucial flight to Singapore, where she was set to deliver a keynote address at the Global Tech Innovation Summit. This conference was not just another event. It held the potential to secure a $500 million investment from the Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund, a deal that could propel Nexus Innovations to new heights. Unlike many executives who traveled with entourages, Jessica preferred to fly solo on long trips. This allowed her the space to think and strategize for the lengthy journey ahead. However, the day took a turn for the worse as soon as she arrived at LaGuardia Airport. Approaching the Pirium check-in area, she was intercepted by a gate agent who, without even glancing at her ticket, curtly directed her to the economy check-in line. Jessica paused, taking a deep breath to maintain her composure. "I'm flying first class to Singapore," she explained politely, showing her digital boarding pass. The agent's impatience was palpable as she repeated her directive, forcing Jessica to endure this small yet significant humiliation. After checking in with a different agent, Jessica proceeded to the security checkpoint, where she was singled out for an additional screening that seemed to target her based solely on her appearance. As she underwent the invasive procedure, she could only watch as several white businessmen walked through the premium lane without any scrutiny. The sting of discrimination lingered as she gathered her belongings, but she remained determined not to let her frustrations show. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a much larger conflict. By the time Jessica reached Gate 37B, the boarding process for her flight to Singapore was already underway. Despite the delays she faced at security, she still had ample time to board, as first-class passengers are typically allowed priority access. However, as she approached the boarding lane, she encountered a gate agent named Meredith, who eyed her with immediate suspicion. "Excuse me, ma'am, this lane is reserved for first-class passengers only," Meredith stated, her tone implying that Jessica did not belong there. Jessica calmly presented her boarding pass once again. "Yes, I'm aware. I'm in seat 2A, she replied, but Meredith scrutinized the document as if it were forged. After a moment of hesitation, she picked up the phone to call for a supervisor, her demeanor suggesting that she doubted Jessica's credibility. As Jessica stood there, several passengers began to notice the interaction. A supervisor named Richard approached, his permanent scowl deepening as he assessed the situation. "Is there a problem here?" he inquired, directing his question at Meredith rather than at Jessica. The implication that Jessica's presence was questionable hung in the air, causing a few nearby passengers to snicker while others looked on uncomfortably. Jessica's frustration grew, but she maintained her poise. "What's the issue?" she asked, her voice steady. "I have a valid first-class ticket." Instead of resolving the matter, Richard insisted on verifying her identity and required additional documentation. This wasn't standard procedure, but it felt like harassment disguised as protocol, and Jessica knew she was being singled out. As the minutes ticked by, Jessica remained at the customer service desk, watching the chaos unfold around her. Other first-class passengers had boarded the plane, leaving her behind while she was subjected to what felt like baseless scrutiny. After a lengthy wait, Richard finally returned with a dispassionate look on his face. "I regret to inform you that while we were verifying your information, your flight has departed," he stated, lacking any semblance of empathy. Jessica's heart sank. "I missed my flight because your staff detained me on false pretenses," she insisted, her voice steady despite the anger bubbling within. Richard dismissed her complaint, offering to rebook her on the next flight, but only in economy class. The insult stung. She had paid for a first-class ticket, and now she was being downgraded due to the airline's incompetence. Frustration mounted as she watched the last remnants of her flight disappear, the jet bridge retracting and the plane taxiing away. The nearby crowd began to murmur, and some passengers turned to her with accusatory glares, blaming her for the disruption. "Is she the reason our flights are canceled?" one man demanded, his voice raised in anger. Determined not to be a scapegoat, Jessica stood her ground. "I demand to be rebooked in first class on the next flight," she asserted, her confidence unwavering. Richard's face flushed, but the reality of the situation was undeniable. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the rising tension around her, setting the stage for a confrontation that would change everything. As Jessica sat at the customer service desk, her mind raced. She was not just a passenger, she was the CEO of Nexus Innovations, and her company's future depended on the outcome of this trip. Just then, her phone vibrated in her pocket. It was Marcus, her chief strategy officer. Ignoring the chaos around her, she answered the call, her tone shifting to one of urgency. "Jessica, the Singapore Sovereign Fund needs our decision by tomorrow morning," Marcus explained. "They want to know which airline we're recommending for the global corporate contract before finalizing the acquisition paperwork." Jessica's heart raced as she realized that Sky Globe Airlines was on the short list for this lucrative deal, but now they were failing the most critical test, providing excellent service. "Remove Sky Globe from consideration immediately," Jessica instructed, her voice firm. The stakes were high, and she could not allow her company's reputation to suffer due to discrimination. As she hung up, she realized the implications of her words. Not only was she evaluating an airline for a substantial contract, but she also held significant stock in Sky Globe, 28% of the company's shares, the largest single block, even greater than the Winter family's holdings. This revelation fueled her determination. She was not just fighting for herself, she was standing up for her company and everyone who faced discrimination. Jessica formulated a plan, knowing that her next steps would not only address her personal grievances, but also challenge the systemic issues within the airline industry. With her resolve strengthened, Jessica decided it was time to take a stand. As the tension in the terminal escalated, she stepped away from her legal team and approached a nearby row of seats. Climbing onto a chair to elevate herself above the crowd, she gathered everyone's attention. "My name is Jessica Taylor," she began, her voice cutting through the noise with authority. "I am the CEO of Nexus Innovations and the founder of Horizon Capital." The simple act of declaring her identity shifted the atmosphere in the terminal. Passengers who had previously been indifferent or hostile now turned their attention to her, curiosity replacing skepticism. "I arrived here today as a paying customer with a valid first-class ticket," she continued, her tone steady and assertive. "I was denied boarding not because of my actions, but because of the color of my skin." A hush fell over the crowd as her words resonated. Even those who had initially sided with the airline began to listen. "What happened to me is not an isolated incident. It happens to countless individuals every day in airports across this country," she asserted. "But today, it happened to someone who has the power to demand accountability." As she spoke, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. A few bystanders pulled out their phones, recording the moment as word spread about the unfolding confrontation. Just then, Bradley Winters, the CEO of Sky Globe, rushed into the scene, his expression a mix of disbelief and anger. He realized that Jessica was not just a passenger, she was a formidable force, ready to challenge the status quo. The tension in the terminal reached a boiling point as Jessica continued her powerful address. Her presence, elevated above the crowd, commanded attention. As she explained how systemic discrimination had affected her and others, the atmosphere shifted from hostility to support. Passengers began to understand that this was not just about a missed flight. It was about justice and dignity. As Jessica spoke, local news crews arrived, drawn by the commotion. Cameras began to roll, capturing her every word. Bradley Winters, witnessing the sudden media attention, tried to intervene, insisting it was a private matter. However, Officer Taylor stepped forward, asserting that the terminal was a public space, allowing the media to cover the unfolding story. The announcement that all Sky Globe flights were temporarily grounded echoed through the terminal, causing further chaos among passengers. Frustrated travelers turned towards Jessica, some blaming her for the disruption, while others started to rally behind her cause. In that moment, Jessica transformed from a victim of discrimination into a symbol of resilience and empowerment. She had not only stood up for herself, but it also ignited a movement for accountability. Sky Globe Airlines was now facing a public relations crisis, and the consequences of their actions were becoming painfully clear. As the situation unfolded, Jessica's legal team arrived with the necessary documents to support her case. The confrontation at Gate 37B was no longer merely a personal grievance. It had become a pivotal moment in the fight against discrimination in the airline industry. This story, shared on the Change Weavers channel, would resonate with many and inspire others to stand up for their rights.